Gene Hackman's children have just broken their silence, revealing shocking details about their father's final days. Details that no one saw coming. For weeks, the official version of his passing has gone unchallenged, but now, unsettling new revelations have surfaced that could change everything. What was kept hidden behind closed doors? And could there be more to the story of Gene Hackman's last moments than the world was led to believe? His family, once silent, has now come forward with statements that have left fans stunned, raising troubling questions about what truly happened in the days leading up to his death. Was Gene Hackman's passing really as peaceful as it seemed, or is there a darker truth waiting to be uncovered? Stay with us as we unravel the shocking claims made by his own children and expose the hidden truth behind the legendary actor's final chapter. Whispers and speculation surrounding Gene Hackman. For decades, Gene Hackman was a name that carried weight in Hollywood. A legendary actor with a career spanning over 5 decades, he was known for his commanding screen presence, his no-nonsense attitude, and his ability to disappear into any role he took on. But while the world admired his performances, few truly knew the man behind the camera. Now, after his passing, whispers of a hidden past have started to emerge, stirring controversy and speculation about the life he led away from the public eye. Rumors have always surrounded Hackman, but most were dismissed as the usual gossip that follows any Hollywood star. Some claimed he had a temper, that he was difficult to work with, while others insisted he had a secretive side that few ever saw. Yet none of these stories gained much traction during his lifetime. He was, after all, one of the greats, an actor who had earned his place in cinematic history. But after his death, the whispers turned into something more. Talk of private meetings, secret relationships, and even a past that some believed had been carefully erased from public records began circulating. Some insiders suggested that Hackman had spent years covering up parts of his life that he never wanted the world to see. Others speculated that his reclusive lifestyle in his later years wasn't just about retirement, but about avoiding questions he wasn't ready to answer. One of the most persistent rumors is that Hackman had ties to people in Hollywood who helped shape his career in ways that weren't entirely conventional. Stories have surfaced suggesting that he was involved in backroom dealings, silent partnerships, and friendships with figures who operated behind the scenes, controlling aspects of the industry that the public rarely heard about. Was he simply a respected actor, or was there more to the story? And then there were the claims about his personal life. Claims that painted him as a man with secrets that stretched beyond the industry. Some say he led a double life, maintaining connections that only a handful of people knew about. Others insist that there were incidents throughout his career that were buried. Incidents that, had they been revealed at the time, could have altered the course of his legacy forever. The speculation has only grown louder as more people come forward with stories, some credible, others outright sensational. But in the absence of definitive proof, the truth remains elusive. What was Gene Hackman hiding, and how much of the man the world thought they knew was carefully constructed to keep those secrets locked away? The whispers continue, and with them, the mystery of Gene Hackman only deepens.
Well, this week, our community lost a giant, and I lost a dear friend, Gene Hackman. I had the pleasure of working alongside Gene on 2 films, Unforgiven and Under Suspicion. Like everyone who's ever shared a scene with him, I learned he was a generous performer and a man whose gifts elevated everyone's work. He received 2 Oscars, but more importantly, he won the hearts of film lovers all over the world. Gene always said, "I don't think about legacy. I just hope people remember me as someone who tried to do good work." So I think I speak for us all when I say, Gene, you'll be remembered for that and for so much more. Rest in peace, my friend.
The family's shocking revelation, secrets kept for years. In the days following Gene Hackman's passing, the world mourned the loss of a Hollywood legend. But while fans and colleagues shared their memories, his family remained unusually quiet. For weeks, there was nothing. No heartfelt statements, no public reflections, just silence. And then, when they finally broke that silence, what they revealed left everyone stunned. Hackman's children had always been private, rarely speaking about their father's life outside of his films. But now, with nothing left to protect, they dropped a revelation that had apparently been buried for years. According to them, Hackman had secrets he had fought to keep hidden even from those closest to him. There were things he never spoke about, chapters of his life that had been carefully erased, and decisions that had consequences far beyond what anyone could have imagined. The most shocking part wasn't just what they revealed, but why they had kept it hidden for so long. One of his children reportedly said, "We weren't allowed to talk about it. We knew better than to ask." This single statement raised more questions than answers. What was so serious that even his own family had been forced into silence? What truth had Hackman taken with him to the grave? Speculation spread like wildfire. Some believed it had to do with his personal relationships, while others suggested it was something darker, something that, if uncovered, could completely shift the way the world viewed him. Insiders hinted that there had been tension between Hackman and his children for years, and that they had spent much of their lives trying to make sense of the things they weren't allowed to discuss. But now, with him gone, they were no longer holding back. And while they didn't reveal everything, their cryptic words were enough to ignite a firestorm of speculation. What were they alluding to? What had they been forced to keep quiet about? And most importantly, why now? Why choose this moment to finally speak up? With each passing day, more pieces of the puzzle seem to emerge, but instead of providing clarity, they only make the mystery of Gene Hackman even more complex. And as the world watches, waiting for more revelations, one thing is certain: this story is far from over. The on-set scandal that no one saw coming. The world had always known Gene Hackman as a powerhouse actor, a man who dominated the screen with his intense performances and unshakable presence. He had built a career on playing strong, often ruthless men, characters who commanded respect and left audiences captivated. Behind the camera, away from the carefully crafted image of Hollywood's golden years, there was a side to Hackman that few had ever truly seen. And when whispers of an on-set scandal began to spread, the industry was left reeling. It started as nothing more than a murmur, quiet chatter exchanged between crew members on a film set years ago. At first, the story seemed too unbelievable to gain traction, dismissed as just another Hollywood rumor. But then, someone who had been there, someone who had witnessed the moment firsthand, came forward with details that changed everything. According to multiple sources, there had been an incident, one that was so unexpected, so shocking, that it had nearly shut down production altogether. The film was in its final weeks of shooting, and tensions were already running high. Hackman, ever the perfectionist, had been at odds with the director over certain creative decisions, and the atmosphere on set had become tense. But it wasn't a disagreement over the script or a clash of egos that made headlines. It was what happened during a seemingly ordinary break between scenes that no one could have predicted. A few members of the crew recalled seeing Hackman step away from the set with another man, someone who was not part of the main cast but had been present throughout filming. There was nothing particularly unusual about the interaction at first. Actors often shared quiet moments away from the chaos of production. But what happened next would send shockwaves through everyone who saw it. According to those who witnessed the event, Hackman and the man exchanged a brief conversation before something completely unexpected happened. Right there, in the middle of a secluded part of the set, Gene Hackman leaned in and kissed him. The reaction was immediate. The few who saw it stood frozen, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Some turned away, pretending as though they hadn't seen anything at all, while others whispered amongst themselves in disbelief. No one knew what to say. This was Gene Hackman, the Hollywood icon, the leading man, the embodiment of masculinity in American cinema. And yet, here he was, engaging in a moment so personal, so intimate, that it contradicted everything people thought they knew about him. What made the situation even more confusing was the expression on Hackman's face after the moment passed. He didn't look embarrassed, nor did he seem to regret what had just happened. If anything, he looked calm, unapologetic. And then, without a word, he simply returned to the set, as though nothing had occurred. But of course, something had occurred, and there was no stopping the fallout that would follow. Word of the incident spread quickly, moving through the crew like wildfire. By the end of the day, nearly everyone on set had heard about what had happened, and speculation ran rampant. Some insisted that it must have been a misunderstanding, an over-exaggeration of a simple gesture. Others weren't so sure. If it had been anyone else, perhaps it wouldn't have mattered. But this was Gene Hackman, and people wanted answers. The studio caught wind of the rumors almost immediately, and executives were quick to step in. Damage control became the priority. No one could afford a scandal, especially one involving an actor of Hackman's status. Meetings were held behind closed doors, and those involved in the production were warned not to speak about what they had seen. Any mention of the incident could cost them their jobs. And so, for years, the story remained buried. nothing more than a whispered legend among those who had been there. It was as though the industry had collectively decided to erase the moment from history, pretending that it had never happened. But even as people tried to forget, the questions remained. Who was the man that Hackman had kissed? What had led to that moment? And most importantly, why had no one ever spoken about it? As time passed, speculation continued to grow. Some claimed that the incident had been nothing more than a lapse in judgment, a private moment that had unfortunately played out in public. Others believed that it was something more, something deeper, something that Hackman had kept hidden for years. But if anyone thought that the actor would step forward to address the rumors, they were mistaken. Hackman never spoke about that day, never acknowledged the whispers that followed him. In interviews, he remained as composed as ever, skillfully redirecting conversations whenever they veered too close to his personal life. And yet, the silence only made people more curious. Fans, journalists, and even fellow actors found themselves dissecting old footage, looking for any hint, any clue that might reveal more about Hackman's true nature. They combed through past interviews, examined the roles he had chosen, and searched for patterns in his relationships. But the truth remained elusive, locked away behind the persona he had so carefully constructed. Now with Hackman's passing, the story has resurfaced, reigniting the curiosity that had been buried for decades. People who had been there are finally speaking out, sharing their accounts of that fateful day. And while some continue to defend the actor, arguing that whatever happened was his own business, others believe that the world deserves to know the truth. But the question remains, why was this moment hidden for so long? Was it simply a product of its time, an era where certain truths were kept out of the spotlight? Or was there something bigger at play, something that Hackman himself had been determined to keep secret? One thing is certain, this scandal is far from over. With new voices coming forward and the mystery surrounding the incident continuing to unravel, the world may finally be on the brink of discovering the truth about Gene Hackman. But whether that truth will change his legacy for better or worse remains to be seen. Fans, in shock, truth or fiction? The moment the rumors hit the internet, fans of Gene Hackman were thrown into complete disarray. For decades, Hackman had been an untouchable figure in Hollywood, an actor so respected, so deeply ingrained in the history of American cinema, that few had ever dared to question his legacy. But now, with the resurfacing of a long-buried scandal, everything had changed. People didn't know what to believe. Was it true? Had Hollywood really covered up something so explosive for all these years? Or was this just another case of misinformation spiraling out of control? The discussions started in niche film forums and gossip sites before exploding across social media. Some fans immediately dismissed the rumors as nonsense, calling them an attempt to tarnish the reputation of a man who had spent his entire career proving his talent and dedication to his craft. To them, this was nothing more than baseless speculation, another fabricated scandal designed to stir controversy. "This is ridiculous," one longtime fan wrote. Gene Hackman was an actor, not a tabloid personality. He didn't live for attention, he lived for his work. There's no way he would have been involved in something like this. But others weren't so sure. The details, they argued, were too specific to ignore. There were people on set who had allegedly witnessed the event firsthand, individuals who had nothing to gain from lying. If it were just a baseless rumor, why was the industry so quick to shut it down back then? Why had everyone involved been sworn to secrecy? The more people dug into it, the more questions they found. Some fans even began rewatching Hackman's films, looking for any subtle clues that might confirm or debunk the rumors. His performances were being reanalyzed, his interviews dissected, and his personal life picked apart in ways that had never been done before. Clips from old talk shows surfaced, where Hackman dodged certain personal questions with his usual dry wit and blunt attitude. But was he avoiding something? Had he spent his entire career skillfully steering conversations away from the truth? The reactions weren't just limited to longtime fans. Hollywood itself found itself in the midst of the storm. Fellow actors, directors, and former co-stars were suddenly being asked about Hackman in ways they hadn't been before. Some refused to comment, while others expressed shock that such a story was making headlines so many years after the supposed incident. Gene was a private guy, one former co-star said in a podcast interview. He wasn't one to talk about his personal life, but I never got the sense that he was hiding anything. That comment only added fuel to the fire. If Hackman had been private, could that mean there was something he had kept from the public all these years? Others were more vocal in their opinions. "People need to stop trying to rewrite history," one Hollywood veteran said in an interview. Gene Hackman was one of the greatest actors of our time. Trying to drag his name through the mud after he's gone is just disgusting. The divide among fans became more apparent as the story gained traction. Some launched full-scale defenses of Hackman, while others began to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was some truth to the whispers. Debates raged on Twitter, Reddit, and Instagram, with people arguing about whether or not Hollywood's silence all those years ago was proof of a deeper cover-up. If this was nothing, one person tweeted, why did they bury it? Why didn't Hackman ever address it himself? Others pointed out that even if the incident had happened, it didn't change his contributions to cinema. At the end of the day, what does this even matter? One post read. Hackman was an incredible actor. That's what we should remember him for. But there were also those who felt differently, saying that if Hollywood had worked to suppress this information, there was something inherently wrong with that. If the industry covered this up for decades, another tweet argued, what else have they hidden? What other stories have been buried? The speculation reached new heights when someone claiming to have been present on set that day posted anonymously on a film forum. Their account aligned with many of the previous claims. That Hackman had in fact kissed another man on set and had done so without shame or hesitation. But they added something new, the idea that the kiss hadn't been an accident or a lapse in judgment. According to this alleged witness, Hackman had known exactly what he was doing. There was no shock on his face after, they wrote. No embarrassment, just acceptance. Like he didn't care who saw. That revelation, if true, changed everything. Up until that point, most had assumed that if the incident had happened at all, it had been either a misunderstanding or a moment of poor judgment. But if Hackman had been fully aware of his actions, if he had done it without caring who was watching, then what did that mean? Had he been hiding something all these years? Was there a part of himself that he had never shared with the world? Even mainstream media began to take notice. Major entertainment news outlets started reporting on the controversy, with some treating it as a legitimate Hollywood mystery and others dismissing it as unfounded gossip. News anchors debated whether it was ethical to drag a deceased actor's name through the mud over something that may or may not have even happened. Late-night talk show hosts made jokes about the situation, while YouTube conspiracy channels released deep-dive videos analyzing every possible angle of the story. And yet, despite all the noise, one thing remained clear. No one had definitive proof. There was no footage, no photographs, no undeniable evidence. All anyone had were accounts from people who claimed to have been there, recollections that could either be truthful or exaggerated over time. But in the absence of concrete facts, the story took on a life of its own. For some, Hackman's silence on the matter over the years spoke volumes. He never denied it, one fan pointed out in a discussion thread. He never admitted it either. But sometimes, silence says more than words. Others felt that people were grasping at straws, trying to create a scandal where there was none. People love tearing down their idols, one journalist wrote in an op-ed. Hackman was one of the greats, and now that he's gone, people are desperate to make him into something else. But the truth, whatever it was, remained just out of reach. Would anyone ever come forward with undeniable proof? Or would this remain one of Hollywood's greatest unsolved mysteries? Regardless of what people believed, one thing was undeniable. The conversation surrounding Gene Hackman had changed forever. More than just a kiss, the other shocking rumors. As the controversy surrounding Gene Hackman's on-set kiss continued to spiral, new whispers emerged. Rumors that stretched far beyond that single incident. It seemed that once the floodgates of speculation had been opened, there was no stopping the tide of accusations, half-truths, and wild theories about the legendary actor's personal life. What began as a shocking revelation about a moment caught on set quickly turned into something much bigger. Some sources claimed that the kiss was not an isolated event but part of a much deeper hidden side of Hackman that had been carefully kept from the public eye. The whispers suggested that he had led a secret double life, maintaining a carefully curated Hollywood image while indulging in behaviors that would have been considered scandalous, especially in the golden age of his career. Had he been quietly breaking the mold all along, or was this just another case of people twisting reality to fit their own narratives? One particularly persistent rumor centered around Hackman's alleged connections to a private underground social scene in Hollywood. Some claimed that he was part of an exclusive circle of actors and directors who gathered in secrecy, far away from the public eye. indulging in activities that would have caused an uproar had they ever been exposed. The details of these alleged gatherings varied wildly depending on who was telling the story. Some insisted they were simple, no-press-allowed industry parties, while others hinted at something far more salacious. But what everyone could agree on was that if Hackman had truly been involved, he had been incredibly skilled at keeping it all under wraps. Other sources pointed to his notoriously private nature as evidence that he was hiding more than people ever realized. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Hackman rarely gave personal interviews, avoided public appearances unless absolutely necessary, and refused to engage in the traditional Hollywood culture of oversharing. To some, this was simply the mark of a man who valued his own space, but to others, it suggested something more, something that had been hidden for decades and was only now coming to light. "Think about it," one anonymous insider wrote in an online forum. "Hackman was one of the biggest stars of his generation, and yet we know so little about him. Why do you think that is?" Another swirling theory involved claims of old discarded footage from a movie set that allegedly contained an unexpected moment with Hackman.